All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Wendy Harris-Gewen. I am one of the admins of the SLV News and Events page. I am also a resident of the San Lorenzo Valley and a member of the community. We're here today with Ian and Ceci from Homebound.com. Homebound is a full-service builder that specializes in fire recovery. They handle everything from insurance and debris removal support to pre-construction, architecture and design, and ultimately do custom building. Their unique focus and efficiency and efficient approach has been featured on Forbes, Bloomberg, and Architectural Digest. You can learn more about them at homebound.com. Ian Bishop is responsible for growth for Homebound, which means he's typically the first person on location in disaster areas. Over the past 3 years, he's responded to 4 separate fires and 1 hurricane, meaning that he has a lot of on-the-ground experience around the process and considerations to keep in mind during the recovery period. Ceci Clarke is Homebound's VP of Construction Services and a builder with over 30 years of experience. In the industry since 1986, 11 of her homes have been featured in publications such as Architectural Digest, Elle Decor, and Town and Country. So welcome, Ian and Ceci. Thank you for being here with us today and going over debris removal for the residents of Boulder Creek and Bonnie Doon that have recently suffered, and Ben Lomond, some pretty hard losses in our community. We really appreciate you being here and doing this. So welcome and thank you.
Thank you, Wendy, and appreciate the introduction. I am going to go ahead and share my screen so that everybody can see the slides that we've put together. And I just want to echo what Wendy said. We're really grateful to be here and to be able to share this information with you guys. If there are questions, please throw them in the Q&A through the Zoom. I'm happy to answer anything. I hope we cover most of what's on your mind already, but anything that we don't get to that you have questions about, please make sure you ask. And we're also happy to set up any one-on-one conversations as well if there's things people would like to discuss. As Wendy mentioned, Homebound is a full-service builder. We were launched after the Tubbs fire up in Santa Rosa in 2017. One of our founders lost his house in the fire, and when he was going through the rebuilding process, he realized that it was pretty daunting and there was a lot of steps to go through. And so he put together a team and basically said, I'm going to start a company that makes this easier. And so that's where Homebound came from. Most of the folks who work at Homebound have been personally impacted by events like this. My parents lost their house in Hurricane Dorian in the Bahamas last year. And so we're all, very aware of what everybody's going through. And I want to just say, first and foremost, really sorry that you guys are having to go through this, but we're hopeful that we can teach you some things and help provide some clarity through the presentation today. So I'm Ian, I lead our growth team. I'm responsible for launching in new areas when disaster strikes. And Ceci, you want to give your quick introduction?
Yes, hi, I'm Ceci Clarke. I run construction services at Homebound. And I'll echo what Ian said. I'm really sorry for the position that you're in and the impact to your community.
So goals for today, first and foremost, we are here to help. We specialize in disaster rebuilding, and we have experts on staff who can support in pretty much every capacity throughout the rebuilding process. We want to introduce ourselves and discuss some of these early considerations around debris removal, which is probably what I would consider one of the first big hurdles that you have to get over following a natural disaster. So we'll talk through, what you need to think about when you're getting your lot cleared, thinking about the FEMA offering versus private options, understanding what is included in your insurance policy for debris removal, things that you need to know from an erosion control perspective. We're coming up on rainy season, so erosion is a big deal and something that we all need to be really aware of right now. And then also just an overview of the process. And hopefully we've put together some charts and hopefully they can provide some clarity for you. And then at the end of the presentation, we'll have just quick time for Q&A to discuss anything that we haven't covered that you may have questions about. So over the last couple of years, we've experienced the rebuild and recovery process on 3 major wildfires in California. Like I mentioned, in 2017, when the Tubbs fire occurred, there was about 6,000 houses that were impacted. That was actually the birthplace of Homebound. In 2018, when the Woolsey fire happened down in Malibu, about 2,000 houses were impacted. I was down there for 8 months after the fire. And then last year, the Kincaid fire, which CAL FIRE did an amazing job saving structures. It was much smaller damage in terms of residences destroyed, but still an absolutely massive and devastating fire. So we've been doing these for the last couple of years, and we've seen the ways that sort of overall recovery of areas occur. And while a lot of things will feel really unique to, the Boulder Creek area or to other parts of the neighborhoods that were impacted, the reality is that your neighbors from all over California have gone through similar things. And what we are trying to do is take the learnings from those recovery periods and pass them to you so that you're not having to, start from square one, basically. So first thing we're going to talk about is debris removal consideration. So phase one, which is what we're in right now, is where the US EPA is doing what they consider hazmat removal. When a house burns down, there are a lot of household items that can become really dangerous. Things like paint and ammunition and lead-based products and thinners and all of the things that the EPA wants to make sure are removed from your lot before people go out and can endanger themselves. So this is a mandatory process that the hazmat clearance is one of the most critical initial steps in debris removal. That one, there's not a lot of control over. It just happens. You have to be involved in hazmat clearance. And then once your lot is actually cleared of hazmat, that's where you start to get some choices. So the first thing that you're going to look at is insurance and understanding your policy. You're going to want to know, what was covered in terms of dwelling, what was covered in terms of personal property, what was covered for additional structures, for landscape. And then typically within that insurance policy, there's a percentage that's allocated for debris removal against each one of those line items. And that's how you understand if your policy is going to allow you to take the choice between private and public. If you are looking at private, there's some advantages, there's some cost considerations you have to take into account. And then on the federal option, there's a ton of advantage because there is no cost to you and you have a bunch of, you're basically guaranteed to have your lot cleared at the back end, but there's some disadvantages in terms of the amount of control that you have. So we'll go into each one of these in detail and then we can answer any questions that folks have as well. So debris removal phase one, this is the EPA phase that I was talking about. So essentially the EPA will come in, what they are doing is collecting all hazardous household waste and they properly dispose of it. So you can't just take, traditional hazmat material from a house and take it to your dump and get rid of it. It has to go to a facility that has the certifications to handle that sort of debris. The goal of this is to mitigate risk to the environment, to the homeowner, and ensure safety for phase two, and to get rid of all of the debris. For phase two, it's a much larger team of both private and public contractors that are going to come in, and they are going to be working on removing, damaged foundations, damaged retaining walls, ash and debris. And if they were mixed in with hazmat, it would make their job a lot harder and a lot more dangerous. So the phase one of EPA debris removal, it began on September 28th. The goal for completion is December 1st. They're trying to rush through this because we have rainy season coming up. And when you mix rain with hazmat and with debris, you end up in a situation where landslides are actually a pretty big issue. And so they are trying to get this done so that we can get erosion control programs in place before the rainy season happens. So this is phase one. It's already going on. We've got a link down here at the bottom to a map that's been produced by the EPA. If your property's listed there, they are on top of making sure that your hazmat happens, and they have a goal of getting it done in the next 60 days. So I'm not sure if we want to save questions for the end, but this phase is pretty straightforward. There's not a lot of things that you need to do, not a lot of choice that you have. This is just the hazmat removal, which is phase one of debris removal. So the second thing we want to talk about a little bit is erosion control and the considerations we should have there. So the concerns are obviously landslides. Landslides are a threat in steep hilly areas, but the risk can be pretty severely magnified after a fire because retaining walls are damaged, flora is gone, the root systems aren't intact to hold hillsides together. And so that loose soil and rock can end up creating landslides. So there are a lot of programs to be put in place to sort of absorb the water, hold the hillside intact. And these are things that we want to address because this risk can last for a long time until erosion control is put into place and communities start to rebuild. So to mitigate it, the county has created what they're calling the Watershed Emergency Response Team. They're going to be mapping the high probability zones for debris flow. The early feedback is that the areas around Scott Creek, Big Basin State Park, and Cascade State Ranch have a 60 to 100% risk of debris flow. So if you're in one of those areas, it's going to be critical that you get erosion control in place as soon as hazmat is done. The situation that makes it a little bit harder in your area is that there is such steep terrain and it is very hilly. And so on a site-by-site basis, it's pretty important to engage a local civil engineer who is familiar with the soil compaction, and they'll evaluate your situation. They can come up with a custom plan for your particular lot. You want to think about this both from a temporary standpoint to control, your site as it exists today, but then you also need to have a civil plan for long-term as you rebuild your house, because you need to have erosion control and you might need to replace things like retaining walls if they were damaged in the fire. So the second phase is where you start to get a lot more control. And this is where we get the vast majority of our questions around debris removal. So FEMA is typically enacted if a disaster is of a specific size. There's a bunch of pros and a bunch of cons to the public option. So number one is that you don't have to come out of pocket for anything in the FEMA debris removal program. You have to submit a right of entry, which allows them access to your property. And then FEMA will actually go deal directly with your insurance company. They will get whatever you were allocated in your policy from a debris removal perspective. And that's the max that they can take, but they will finish the work regardless if your insurance policy doesn't cover the total amount. The thing that you need to think about with insurance and your debris removal policy is that it's kind of use it or lose it. If you were thinking about building your house and you were looking at your total policy valuation, you would not be able to use the debris removal dollars for building. The debris removal dollars have to go towards debris removal. So if you have enough in your debris removal policy, you can make the choice between private and public. Or obviously, if you want to come out of pocket, you can make the choice between private and public. But if you are working with a smaller debris removal budget from your insurance policy, FEMA is typically the best route to go. The cons with it are that when FEMA comes in, this is like a large scale operation and they are working to do it as quickly as possible. And so you don't actually have a lot of control. You can't, say, hey, I want to save this wall, or I want to test my foundation, or I want to sift through, this part of the debris to see if I can find important personal items. When they come in, it's basically scrape the lot clear, get it as close to ready to build as possible. And the whole goal is to do it for as many people as effectively as possible. The other con is that it tends to be pretty slow. This is a massive operation that they're running. In Malibu, after the Woolsey fire, it took almost 9 months for FEMA to complete the debris removal process. And before debris removal is done, you really can't do a lot of the pre-construction activities you need to get rebuilding. If you wanted to start working with an architect, they're going to need a survey and a topo map and a soils report to start designing your home. And a lot of that stuff is very difficult to do before debris removal actually happens. So to recap with FEMA, the pros are that it's free. You're not going to, have to pay anything out of pocket, even if they, on the first pass, they miss hazmat and you have to do a recertification or anything like that. It's still all covered through FEMA if you go with the public option. With the private option, if your insurance policy allows, or if you want to come out of pocket to cover any of the difference, the pros are really the flexibility and timing and the control over your property. Private option is typically significantly faster. So if you are in a hurry to rebuild your house and to get back into your neighborhood, private can be typically a lot faster than FEMA because they're doing one lot at a time. It's not a massive operation where they're trying to sequence neighborhood by neighborhood. And when we say control over property, the thing that we mean with private is that you can actually go to the site while they're there and you can say, hey, I want you to, take this part of the debris away, but I want you to stop over here because I want to look for something that may have survived the fire. Or you may want to, save your foundation, and you want to have your foundation tested to make sure that its structural integrity still exists, even after being exposed to heat. With a private debris removal option, you're actually able to have somebody come out and test, and you can say, just take the ash, don't take the foundation, or leave this retaining wall in. So it's just really more about the control and the timing that are the big pros for the private option. From the cons perspective, debris removal is expensive. And if your insurance policy did not have the appropriate amount allocated, it might be above your policy limits. To put this into sort of broader strokes, when I was working in Malibu, I saw that it was about a third of the people that we worked with had adequate insurance for private debris removal options. About 2/3 of people did not have adequate debris removal in their insurance policies. There are a few more steps, obviously, with the private options. The contractor that you work with has to be licensed and approved by the county. So you have to source somebody who can work in that area. They have to submit an application and a plan to the county. It has to be approved. And so that part can slow you down a little bit. So, I want to be as transparent about both of these. Both have pros, both have cons. It's really a question of your individual situation, and seeing what works best. Another thing that I would love to call out here is that if you do decide to go the private option, make sure that you are looking at the contractor. Check out that they have a license with the California State Licensing Board. Look for reviews, see if they can give referrals from past clients. Things like that are really important. You also want to look at the contract that they put in front of you. You want to make sure that that contract has stipulations for the entire scope of the project. You don't want to end up in a bait and switch situation. So that's something to just call out as what we want clients to be cautious about. All right, on to the next one. I'm talking ahead of my slides. This is sort of where I was going with the last point. So want to make sure that you are using reputable licensed debris removal firms to avoid issues. You want to make sure that they are actually removing all of the debris. Sometimes, we've had clients in Santa Rosa where when we were doing grading, getting a house ready for a foundation to go in, we actually found debris that had been buried on part of the site. So you want to make sure that the scope is clear and that they're taking everything away that needs to go away. You want to make sure that they're not going to damage things that could be salvageable, things like retaining walls, your septic system. So we want to make sure that you're using somebody that's reputable and knows what they're doing. And then finally, consider what their fee structure is. A lot of debris removal contractors are paid by the ton, and that can misalign their incentives, right? You want to make sure that they are doing the work that you need them to do, and not more than that. If they over excavate your lot and they take things away, it can really mess up your civil and drainage plans for the future. So it's just something to be cognizant of. Think about what their fee structure is, and just be aware of it. The other thing that's really important is that you need to get accurate, detailed estimates. Avoid the bait and switch. You want to know, what the total cost is going to be, what the start date is going to be, what the expected duration is going to be, and it should all be outlined in your contract. With most things in construction, if it seems too good to be true, it probably is. There are a lot of folks that'll come out of the woodwork after a natural disaster across the entire rebuilding spectrum, whether it's debris removal up front all the way through to building. And while I hope and I do really think that most people have good intentions, there are always some bad apples in there that are just being opportunistic and trying to pick up work from a bad situation. So, want to make sure that you're really looking at the people that you're working with, and that you're getting everything very detailed and documented in terms of your contracts with them. Something else to think about is you have to understand the capacity of the trades that these folks work with and their timing. In a lot of cases after these disasters, and these are folks that I would say have the best intentions. You may be working with, a local contractor that's been in the market for 20 or 30 years. And if they typically do, 3 to 5 houses a year or 3 to 5 contracts a year, but after this disaster, they're trying to do 15, I don't think it's because they want to help their community rebuild. But the problem is when builders get really stretched, you can see some big issues around quality and around on delivery and making sure that things are delivered on budget. So just something else to be aware of after an event like this occurs, the supply of people in market who are available to work on your project is way lower than the demand for the people who can do that work. And so you need to be pretty cognizant about your builder's ability to deliver. And this is on, I would say, from debris removal all the way through to the end of your project. All right. So this is just a flow chart that sort of explains the overall process that we've talked about. Santa Cruz has done an amazing job putting a lot of this on the website for the Disaster Recovery Center. We can share this presentation out so that people can look at it, but this is essentially all of the steps that you're going to go through in terms of debris removal. As we mentioned, phase 1, the EPA is going to assess the property for hazmat. Once hazmat's cleared, you can go back to the property to look through debris that's there. Once you get to the actual debris removal portion, you will choose the public option or the private option. Public is FEMA. You'll have to submit the right of entry, and then there's no direct cost, but they will file with your insurance company, and ultimately you'll end with clearance. If you go the private option, the property owner will hire an approved debris removal contractor. We will submit the application to Santa Cruz Environmental Health and the plan. Once it is approved, we clear the debris and you end up with the same clearance being issued. So this is just a visual of how to think about the debris removal process. Until the EPA is done with their hazmat clearance, there's not going to be a ton of things to do except look at your insurance policy, try and get a sense of what your debris removal allocation is, and then from there you can decide, are you going to go the public or private option? And I think that's it for our overall content, but I did see it looked like we had some questions coming in.
Perfect, because I was about to address one of them. So people have heard about stories where FEMA has removed dirt and rocks that then required the homeowners to pay out of pocket to have dirt or rocks brought back that's not covered by insurance. Can you address situations like that?
Yeah. So the Coffee Park neighborhood in Santa Rosa was impacted by the Tubbs fire in 2017, and they actually had this exact problem. So what's really important is that not only do you have a civil and drainage plan for your individual property, but the way that the neighborhood works together is important. Otherwise, when it rains, one lot could be a swimming pool and one lot could be above water. And what we saw was the FEMA contractors that came in, they were working through the neighborhood, and there was not an overarching civil and drainage plan that was put in place. And so you would have one lot that was, at level and one that was completely over excavated, and homeowners did actually have to pay out of pocket to come back. So it is a con to the public option. Like I said, there's pros and cons to both. That individual homeowner didn't have to pay anything to get their lot cleared, but they did pick up costs in terms of bringing in fill to get their lot to a point that their overall civil and drainage plan was working again. Ceci, I don't know if you have anything to add on the over excavation stuff. I know we saw Ceci's down in our Southern California office. I know we saw it a little bit in Malibu.
I think that the Malibu market is a lot more like the Santa Cruz market in many ways. And one of the things that we saw with FEMA is that we have so many homes that are on slopes, or we have homes that are on private streets. And so I see some questions about leaving the foundation in. There was an attempt to see which foundations could be reused. And in general, that isn't that successful. There's just not enough information for older homes about what, rebar is in those foundations, how deep they go and so forth, to allow reuse. But I think for any houses on slopes or in conditions where there is a chance for debris flow, the foundation does help mitigate or stabilize slopes and lots. So to some extent in our homes in Malibu, it made sense to keep those in place, and through the rainy season, definitely stabilize the slopes. The other thing, though, that we've seen is that they would rip out retaining walls that could have been left in place and reused, and that's an expense that isn't often covered by your insurance. And believe it or not, a retaining wall can be relatively expensive to do. So it's nice to keep those on the site if you possibly can. But we also saw on these private roads where the big trucks going in and out, damaged roads. So there was asphalt that was broken up, places that just got, things that got knocked over, whether it was, you know, trees or other features going into the neighborhood or fencing. And there isn't anybody to go back to get to recover those costs. It is something that the homeowner is responsible for.
Okay, and then we had another question about your company specifically come in. It says, how does Homebound address the issue when homes in the same neighborhood will be addressed by FEMA and some by private? And then how confident are you that your experience and plan will be improved by environmental health faster than FEMA?
So it's not necessarily that our plan will be approved faster than FEMA, but our ability to actually execute on the debris removal, because we work lot by lot rather than having to do an overarching neighborhood. Homebound is, we actually, we're a licensed general contractor in California, but we work with a network of debris removal contractors from around the state that we help mobilize into areas. So we have a lot of capacity. So the plan itself, we will submit, and we're on the same schedule as everybody else from a planning and approval perspective. But once we actually have approval and we can go execute, we're going directly to your lot to start on day one, rather than waiting to be, you know, one of 600 that are in the queue for FEMA, if that makes sense.
Well, the other thing I'll say is, your building department is notorious, like ours in Malibu, for how hard it is to process a permit. But the getting debris removal permits, they made really easy. And the people who do them are good at turning in the applications, turning in the required information, and then getting the certification afterwards. It's not as onerous as a building permit.
And I think the other part of the question was, how do we address the civil and drainage issue when multiple lots are being done either by us or by FEMA? So we actually do a civil and drainage plan for the lot that we are working on up front. And so we're essentially like, there's not a chance for us to be underneath what FEMA's doing, because we're building a plan from the beginning. We're not going to over excavate, right? There's not a chance for FEMA to under excavate, because they have to take a minimum amount of soil to get clearance for the debris removal to occur. So as long as Homebound is not over excavating, there's no chance for us to be under FEMA, if that makes sense. I don't think that was the best answer, but I'm trying to basically, because we're doing a civil and drainage plan on that one individual lot and we're not scraping many lots in a row, we're basically doing a plan that allows that lot to drain. And if the house next to us is low because FEMA over excavated, that wouldn't be this lot problem. That's a FEMA problem.
I noticed something too in the information being released for your area, that FEMA, in this case with debris removal, is saying that they're going to leave erosion control in place. That wasn't the case for our other markets. And so that's encouraging.
Do you know, question I just thought of, do you guys know how FEMA determines how deep they will excavate a particular lot?
Ceci, that would probably be one for you.
Yeah, I don't know if that actually varies by market also. In Malibu, I think we were 5 inches, and I don't know what would determine that. Essentially, they are testing the soil before they leave to make sure that it's hazardous free or hazard free.
Okay. All right, anybody got any more questions while we've got Ian and Ceci here?
I also want to say another one of our colleagues is on the phone, Justin. He's our insurance expert, and he's the one that you saw drop into the chat about how CalPlan works. And so if you have any questions about that too, he could answer those. Rock.
All right, well, it looks like we've covered everybody's questions. You guys did a very thorough job in your presentation of covering the process, and I found it very informative. Thank you very much for covering all that. Everybody, here's the last chance.
Yeah, one last thing. I did notice that they are posting a map showing how they plan to get through FEMA, get through hazardous clearing, that you can follow online.
Okay, and then do you guys have any more information about the effects of someone who's been found to the impact on a homeowner who is in a high-risk debris flow area? How that would impact an individual as far as dealing with their lot, or perhaps issues they might run into in the rebuilding process, permitting process, et cetera?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that you're going to need to have an erosion control plan. Ceci, do you want to talk about the requirements for erosion control as it relates to getting a permit?
Yeah, it's very different than, dealing with this rainy season coming up right now. But for getting a permit, there has to be what they call best management practices, a plan put out there that says exactly what you're going to do to control that site during the construction process. It's both county and state mandated. For right now in the rainy season, as far as we can see so far, they're allowing you to do erosion control efforts on your lot, just not in the ash area of the house itself. For areas that are threatened, it's interesting, here in the Santa Barbara area, also I was on a lot this week. And so if maybe your question is directed towards that, of areas that they consider susceptible to mudslides, they have set up some restrictions about rebuilding in those areas, but I haven't heard anything in your area about issues like that.
Okay, and then Kathy had asked, there are items on her property that had different colored orange X's that were spray painted on them. Do you know the color coding system of why those X's were there and how that plays into the debris removal?
So typically the things that they're marking are marked by EPA for different types of hazmat. I'm not sure what the exact color code is that they're using in Boulder Creek right now, but if it's been sprayed with an X, it's typically indicating some type of hazmat that the EPA will remove.
All right, good questions. Thank you, everyone. All right.
Everybody.
Anything else that you guys would like to share about this process or your previous experiences?
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, the biggest thing is there's going to be a ton of information that comes out, and it can be really, really overwhelming. So I would say, especially after just going through this with my parents, balance taking in all of the information and thinking about your specific situation. But it's also really critical to take breaks and to do things to create as much normalcy for yourselves as possible, because it's a long road. Rebuilding after a wildfire it's a difficult task, and it's going to take a year and a half plus for things to really settle. And it's important to get all of the correct information, but don't let yourself get completely overwhelmed by it, because it is a long road and you need to be prepared for it. So I think it's not necessarily on the debris removal topic itself, but I care a lot about people's mental well-being as they go through these sorts of situations. And lean on your friends, lean on your neighbors, find people that you can trust. I'm happy to answer any specific questions people have. If you need to talk about something in detail, my email is ian@homebound.com. But I think that's my biggest piece of advice after working with a few hundred homeowners over the last couple of years. It's that, get all the information you can, but don't try and consume it all at once, because it will be completely overwhelming.
Justin also threw out there that keeping a pen and paper by your bedside so that when you think of things in the middle of the night, to write them down will help you sleep better.
That's good advice, Justin.
Okay, well, thank you guys so much for doing this. It's very, very much appreciated. I know we've got a long road ahead, and the more information people have from reliable sources such as yourselves, the better. So thank you for being here, and thank you for doing this.
Yep, absolutely. And thank you, Wendy, for organizing. And again, for anybody listening, we're happy to help. If you need more information, you can check out homebound.com or send either Ceci, Justin, or myself an email.
And then we will be posting a recording of this meeting on the SLV News and Events original event page, as well as YouTube. So for anybody watching, if you know anybody that could benefit from the information in this video, please share it. It's what it's here for. The more people see this, the more people that we've been able to help. All right. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
All right. And good luck.